You're watching Aurora 8, proud to be serving the All-America city of Aurora, Colorado.
Good day, and today marks the third day of the 27th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemoration Day celebration, and our theme is Injustice is Still a Threat. My name is Theo Wilson, and this is the Barbershop Talk Collective. To my left, I have Mr. DeWitt Pollard III. Right to my right, I have Quincy Hines, and of course, Reverend Quincy Shannon. And today we're talking about the life and the mysteries, surrounding the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And one of the quotes that I'd like to bring into this discussion today is one of the quotes that he had in the letter from the Birmingham jail. And it says, "I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta, concerned about what happens in Birmingham, and not be concerned about injustice everywhere. For injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And so there's a lot of mystery surrounding the life and death of Dr. Martin Luther King. And so much controversy has been put into the mainstream media about the true circumstances surrounding his demise. There's so many facts that we don't know. There's a lot of things that we wish that we did understand. And one of the things that we don't know, at least in general, is about his relationship with a certain man named William Pepper. Now, William Pepper was a photographer in the Vietnam War, circa 1966, and he took some very jarring images and put them in Reuters magazine. Well, Dr. King got a hold of that issue of Reuters magazine, and so moved was he by the images that William Pepper took that he was moved to tears, and it changed his life. So we got in contact with William Pepper, and he told him that I am going to dedicate my life to ending the Vietnam War. Well, on April 4th, 1967, Dr. King made his speech in his stance against the occupation of Vietnam. And a lot of people feel that that may have been the speech that led to his demise. And for the next year, William Pepper and Dr. King worked closely together. And of course, on April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was cut down by an assassin's bullet. And this jarred William Pepper to the point where he began to go on a crusade to figure out why the official story about the death of Dr. Martin Luther King was differing from all of the evidence that he was gathering. And so for the next few decades, he gathered so much evidence, in fact, that he began to put out books. The first one is called Act of State, and the other one is called Orders to Kill. And what a lot of people don't know is that by the time 1993 came around, 20 years ago, James Earl Ray, the supposed assassin of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., had another day in court. And in this day in court, what we found out is that it only took the jury 7.5 hours to find James Earl Ray innocent in a court of law of the crime of killing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, 5 years later, James Earl Ray passed away. But a year after that, William Pepper and the King family found themselves in court again. And this time, they were taking to trial the man who owned a place called Jim's Bar and Grill, directly across from the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was assassinated. In front of Jim's Bar and Grill, they had bushes. Now, these bushes were reported to conceal the true assassin of Dr. Martin Luther King. And the trajectory, ballistically speaking, of the bullet lined up perfectly with the impact. Now, it only took this jury a half an hour before not only was the owner convicted, but also the United States government was also convicted of the conspiracy to murder Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This held up in a court of law, and nobody found out about it. And so now the plot thickens a little bit, because we're saying to you that when does a conspiracy theory no longer become a theory? And the answer is when there's proof, and so much proof that it holds up in a conviction. Now, my question is, if this actually is true, one has to wonder what kind of government, on one hand, would remove this man from the planet, and on the other hand, give him a holiday and a monument. What is the mindset that leads to such behavior? And so what I do in Barbershop Talk is I like to answer my question first and then send it around to the gentleman. So this is the thing that kind of gets me about the Martin Luther King holiday. If in fact what the conviction says is true, it is almost like the mindset of a hunter, where a hunter will go in and take down a deer. And what we look at the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, it is almost like it's been taxidermized. It has been frozen in time. The snapshots are of that time. This is a bygone era, and now we're supposed to pay homage to this. But the fact is that if this is true, then the operators in the assassination are still on the loose. And this is why injustice is still a threat. I'd like to pass it to my brother DeWitt Pollard here. What kind of mindset would remove King and then give him a holiday? What do you think about that?
I think one would, the mindset it would take to do something like that, first and foremost, is manipulative. There has to be means to an end. There's something that you want, but for whatever reason, you can't be seen as going for that. So you would use the smoke screen, smoke and mirrors or whatnot. And the question to me from that is, what are they, or what were they? What is the true prize? If it wasn't just the death of King, what more was there to be had in killing him?
I think that's a very good question. And I'd like to see if any of my other two gentlemen have anything to add to that. Mr. Quincy Hines, how do you feel about this evidence that has come to light and is in fact legal fact now?
Well, it actually doesn't really surprise me because, I mean, you know, given the history of the United States, there's a lot of situations that had happened where certain government officials were responsible for the death of so many other people. So, you know, given the fact that Martin Luther King was as powerful as he was, it kind of leads to me to believe that, you know, there was a lot more to gain from his death than there was while he was alive, in their aspect, because obviously this was during the Jim Crow law era. And I think that, you know, during that time, there was a lot of officials who basically believed that bigotry and racism was the way of life, you know. So I think the rabbit hole obviously goes a lot deeper than we think.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. A vested interest in King's demise probably is basically sums up what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
All right. Reverend Shannon, how about you?
Well, I think Quincy brought up a very interesting fact as far as looking at the history of the United States and looking at some of the events that have taken place up before the assassination of Dr. King. You know, my grandmother, Miss Madistella Holcomb, she was born in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know, and being in the area of Tulsa, Oklahoma, as we know, in 1921 was the same year as Black Wall Street came to its demise, as far as there was so many blocks that were prosperous 35. And that there were individuals upset about that, so that they actually dropped the bomb figuratively and literally and destroyed this area. And that didn't just happen by individual citizens, but there were individuals of the National Guard who actually helped to participate in the demise and the eradication of those individuals in that place. If we look at that event and fast forward throughout history and look at some of the other things that have taken place, looking at Tuskegee and the Tuskegee Institute, and then looking at what happened as far as the testing of syphilis on individuals with quote-unquote bad blood in the area, and how they were directly given something that would lead to their demise for research purposes, it would not put it too far from where we think that the truth can be that our government could do something that would be for the demise or the negative attributes of this. So for me, it's always interesting to look at the past of what has happened, and that helps to understand where we look at to the future and where we'll be going. And for me, with Dr. Martin Luther King, he dreamed in 63 and 64, but he was killed in 68. So for me, when we go back from him dreaming into his actual death, we start to look at the I am man and working with the sanitation workers. We start to look at his stance on the Vietnam War, and we start to see King going from a dreaming individual and this, well, I think we should join together, I have a dream of this, to a man who stopped dreaming and actually started putting foot to pavement and started making his dream his reality. And once that happened, that was when he was eradicated.
You know, that's a very good point. We are often taught to look at Dr. King as a monolithic type of individual who only had one dimension to his character, and that's peace, love, and a drum major for justice. But in fact, the evolutionary arc of this man is something that I think if we really want to understand his life and how his example can serve us, we need to take a look at that one more time. My next question for you gentlemen is, so we have these two things that have held up in a court of law, that James Earl Ray was not the assassin, and that the government has been indicted and convicted for conspiracy to murder this man. So I'm wondering, what are the forces that's keeping the popular narrative alive? And how come the actual facts of it have not taken over the popular narrative? Why do you think that is?
I'd like to believe that fear compels the government to a certain degree, right? Obviously, you know, we have been treated so poorly in this country for so many years. And it's the fact that, you know, obviously, you know, there was one type of government that basically felt that, you know, we need to keep these people oppressed for whatever the reason. We need to keep these people oppressed, and we need to keep these people down so that, you know, they cannot rise up against us. Because, I mean, what happens if the African-American nation rises up against us? I mean, you had so many people that had power, and these people had power like Martin Luther King, like Malcolm X, you know, to basically wave an entire group of people away from causing havoc in a city. You know what I mean? This is the power that we had back then, back in the 60s. You know what I mean? And so just think, if these people can rise up, these people can work collectively, these people can unify themselves to a point to where, you know, we can like literally liberate ourselves from injustice everywhere, you know, in the United States or in abroad. I mean, just think how much responsibility the United States would have had in our history.
That's amazing. And I think that's a good point. Keeping the state intact is the #1 goal of people who work for that state. And if people's liberation is a threat to the solidness of that state, then that is looked at as something that needs to be put down. So how about you, Quincy?
I think it's very interesting because we tend to romanticize history in many aspects. Whereas if we have certain individuals tell a certain narrative, we start to believe that narrative to be true without investigating or challenging that narrative at all. So for me, that narrative is that in schools we're taught that my history as far as an African American started in slavery. And they start my history in oppression and leave out a lot of the narrative of what happened in Africa before we even made it to the United States or America. And for me, that's a problem, because if you start me in oppression, then my mindset may always keep myself oppressed. And then when we go throughout history, we start to look at different images that I grew up believing were true. So one is anytime you looked at a syrup bottle and you see Aunt Jemima, or any of these black mammy characters, you start to think that these are true, that these characters actually represent individuals in the past. And as I started doing research and started looking up who Aunt Jemima was and how it actually came from a minstrel song of the time of blackface and wasn't an actual person, and that we say, okay, well, that may be true. That's okay. We understand things come from different places, but what's the benefit of having an Aunt Jemima mammy character? And you start to look at what does that do to individuals when you start believing that all I can do is wash clothes. All I can do is cook food. No, I don't want to look for a job that will have me in the community. I don't need to look for a job that will have me leaving and not helping these individuals, but I'm going to stay in this capacity and this role, this domesticized role. And for me, that's a big thing. So we start to believe these aspects of history as being true. So much so now that we actually define some of those things, and we'll teach our own children the mysteries and the untruths.
Yeah.
And I think that's a major thing that we deal with as far as history. So with Dr. King, I think it's a lot the same, that we like to keep it in the mind frame of him dreaming.
Yeah.
And that part where
And
it's
what we
safe.
identify with.
Because
Yeah.
if I can keep you dreaming, you're safe. We all have dreams at night.
Yeah.
We all have dreams of what we would like for the country to become. But when you actually start doing something to make those dreams your reality, that's when we find that a lot of our revolutionaries are no longer here.
Yeah, that is a very, very powerful point. The stark reality versus the sanitized narrative. I like what you had to say. You have anything to add to this, Mr. Pollard?
I believe with the government's propaganda as such, if you can control what a person believes, you can control what they become. And so if you wanted to perpetuate an image of Martin Luther King as this peaceful, turn the other cheek, docile man, so people won't look to other alternatives in how to react to racism, how to react, because there was a lot of injustice done. And one of the greatest fears in my eyes of an oppressor is that the oppressed rises up. You know, and so I believe Martin Luther King is idolized merely, like this is the only reason he even has his own holiday and so forth, is to keep us from looking at others such as Martin Luther King, keep us from looking at Huey Newtons and so forth, who said like, give me my respect by any means necessary. You know what I'm saying? They didn't say necessarily let's go start a war, but they did say that if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back.
Yeah.
And I think that mind state is very bothersome to a lot of people in high offices.
I think, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
you good.
Oh, yeah. I think when you are in the position of power, that power also has you. That which you possess also possesses you back. And when we look at people who are in these situations, I often get a flash of sympathy. Like, I understand, because this world is hard, and any bit of advantage that you can get, you want to hold on to that because you don't want to be on the other side of that coin. And so let's look at the dream versus reality. Now, we understand that Dr. King, his most famous speech, of course, is "I have a dream," you know, and but what a lot of people don't understand is that behind the scenes, he was also called the most dangerous Negro in America after that speech. And now in history, we look at that speech and say, oh, wow, like that was so deep, that was so beautiful, that was so inspiring. But we often forget that King wasn't really that popular when he was alive, you guys.
Of course not.
Like matter of fact, when he did the speech against the Vietnam War, he was afraid that all the progress that they had fought for Lyndon Baines Johnson to acknowledge that Lyndon Baines Johnson, they was afraid that he was going to withdraw that legal support that they had fought so hard for. And a lot of people were split on that because we did not know what the Vietnam War would become, the blight on the American history that it is now. And so I like to open it up and say, in terms of the negative realities, and we'll go into the positive ones, but what negative realities existed in King's time that we still confront today? And go ahead, Mr. Pollard.
I believe that the segregation is still true. I believe, like, truth be told, everything turned to money. Instead of black versus white, it's rich versus poor. But the segregation is still there. There's still places I can't go, not because I'm not allowed per se, but because I can't afford it. I can't go to Hawaii, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've been quarantined, and if you look at the way our wages have been set, like if you compare the rising prices of things such as homes or as cars and so on, and compare them to how much we get paid, the average person, is crazy. But at the same time, it's legal, and everything, like, we act like everything is okay. We act like there's progress. We're moving forward. You know, we got Barack Obama, but in reality, like, the worst schools are still the urban. It's still the black and Mexican neighborhoods that have the beat up desks, the teachers that don't care. We don't got like the football equipment. We don't have, it's a lot of stuff that people act like isn't going on anymore that is. Like if you look at prison populations, like it's everywhere. All you gotta do is open your eyes. Look at the bus, you know, catch a bus and see how many people on there are from middle class. And then go downtown, see how many people drive by in a Lamborghini or a Benz or whatever that are from urban neighborhoods, you know?
Absolutely. Mr. Hines.
You know, I kind of find it amazing how, you know, because during the whole second election of Barack Obama, we were down at City Park and we were looking at, I was paying attention to a lot of the people that were there. And a lot of the people that were there were disenfranchised, poor, probably on SSI, people that were looking for a better future. Obama actually represented someone who aspired to great things. You know, he was raised by a single mother. Excuse me, he was African American. He had all of these situations against him that he was able to literally rise up. I mean, Harvard. I mean, the man went to Harvard. So, you know, when we look at what Obama represented, he represented progress to a certain degree. Now, the question is, was that progress a part of that propaganda that allowed us to think that we were freed, or to basically contribute to that complacency that we already have today? I mean, when you talk about the schools and when you talk about certain situations, disparities that we have here in Colorado, even alone, not even to mention New York and these other places, but as we're looking at our situation right now, I mean, they can't deny the fact that there are people that are living below poverty level and that there are people that are living in these ridiculously affluent neighborhoods. You know what I mean? I mean, when you look at that and you see that, you can see that things are still unfair. And it's horrible. And I don't understand how people like that can sleep at night.
That's a very good point. Bringing to mind the moral conscience that Dr. King fought so hard to appeal to. How about you, Reverend?
Well, I love to look at the ministry of Dr. King because it sheds light on what he was thinking close to his demise. Yeah. And when we look at the fact of any time you make a sermon, a speech, a poem that tells somebody that I may not get there with you, but I want you to continue, it sheds a little bit of a mirror onto what he was facing when he looked in his own mirror and realizing that this struggle in which he was fighting so hard for wasn't as glorious as we make it out to be now, where you have a nation behind you loving you, you have a nation behind you supporting you. But he actually knew the harsh realities of the fact that the FBI and the CIA had his phones tapped. Yeah. That there were people and individuals following him and his family, and that he was considered to be the most dangerous person in the United States of America. And once you deal with some of those realities and you start looking at some of the words in which he wrote, and you start paralleling some of those words with what they actually meant. So, and looking at the mountaintop and saying that I may not get to the promised land with you, that means that he felt that he was in the wilderness. Because if we look at the history of the church in which he was representing as far as a Baptist, we start to see the fact that if I'm in the wilderness, I haven't made it to the Jordan River yet. And the whole time from leaving from Egypt into getting to the Jordan, that was a terrible time for the Israelites. It was a time in which many of them didn't even want to continue on and wanted to go back to Egypt and blamed Moses for a lot of what they were going through. So just looking and exegeting some of what he was saying with that, you start to say, okay, he felt like he was in his own wilderness and had not reached his own promised land.
You know, that's a very deep point, because it has been said that any revolutionary who led a revolution did not want to do that. They were swept by forces beyond their control and ended up at the helm of something that they had to make the best of what they had. And one of the things that is right now pressing my injustice buttons is the prison industrial complex, where right now these things are going from being government owned to privately owned. And they're becoming so lucrative that they're actually developing into an American manufacturing base. And it says in the 13th Amendment that slavery is abolished except for when someone has been duly convicted of a crime. That's the prison industrial complex, meaning that technically, legally, under law, anybody in prison is slaves. And it's becoming so big now that these private corporations are being traded on the New York Stock Exchange. You can buy stock in private prisons and the goods that they produce. And I think that when I look at the modern world, there's so many things that Dr. King would take deep issue with that I'm wondering, had he seen them, would he question whether his life was in vain? And these are a lot of things that we need to ask ourselves during this holiday, which so many people pay lip service to. But he wanted us to pick up the torch. He said, I may not get there with you. That is implied that you're going to get there. I just may not be there when you arrive. And so now I think that the major thing for us to do is to take Dr. King's lens and look at our world and see the things that he would pick up the torch on and what would he fight for. And I know that that's one of those issues. Do you guys have any ideas of what else he would fight for?
Well, I would like to jump into the prison industrial complex and the privatization of it, and not even just look at the aspect of what they're making. Because we realize there are major companies right now who have their things made in the prison industrial complex. It's not just license plates anymore, but it's a very lucrative business in which if you go to some of these prisons down in Louisiana, they mirror looking a lot like a plantation where you have to be out in the field and you eat what you pretty much produce on the plantations. But there's another aspect of that in which I was enlightened on is the fact that the prisoners in the prison industrial complex, they're counted in a census. And that generally in that census, because they're prisoners, they cannot vote. But because they're counted within the census, a lot of the small towns that normally don't have a lot of representation as far as minorities go, they still have these individuals counted within their final count in the census, therefore allowing them to get more votes and more electoral votes in certain areas. So we start to realize that you become a voiceless person that allows others to make decisions without you having the ability to have any say-so because you're a felon or a prisoner.
That's a very, very important point. You guys, there's a book written by a woman named Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow. And in this book, she outlines how everything that is now illegal to do to a person because of the color of their skin is now perfectly legal to do to them because of the content of their conviction record. And I think that this kind of says a lot about the world that we live in today. So, gentlemen, we're drawing near to the end of this discussion, and I really, really appreciate the enlightened gentlemen that I have the privilege to be associated with. And I mean, I'd like to hand this over to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Quincy Hines, if there's anything he'd like to say to kind of close us out this evening.
Thank you, Theo.
Yes, sir.
I would like for everybody to understand that we are up here not because we're getting paid. And I'm sure Martin Luther King basically thought the same thing as he was looking into the mirror. He knew that his life was going to be drawn away. And he knew that there was some sacrifices that he needed to give up, mainly his life. Obviously, he was going against forces that he felt like was going to eventually take his life. So what I want you to think about is what sacrifices some of these other individuals have made that you're not making. Is it sacrificing your own pride to raise your children? Is it sacrificing your own comfort, to make sure that they have clothes and shoes on their back and so forth? And then, of course, we think about the laws that we have now today. How can you make a difference in your area? You can make a difference by getting involved, finding a volunteer program that you can, give your energies to. I want to basically challenge each and every one of you out there to do that. Find somewhere to go, find somebody to partner with and get involved. Remember, this is the 27th annual, and we will continue to have more as the years progress. God bless.
I am Dr. Barbara Shannon Bannister, Chief of the Community Relations Division, celebrating our 27th annual Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration. I am also blessed to be the only continuous member of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Colorado Holiday Commission, established by then Governor Richard D. Lamb in 1985. There is always something special every year we celebrate the holiday honoring a great man whose lifetime so many of us shared. He awakened our national pride and the essential goodness of our people and led the nonviolent revolution that enriched our moral fiber as a nation. He was born in 1929, assassinated in 1968 at the young age of 39. This year he would have been 84 years old. If the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, no doubt he would still be in the forefront for justice, peace, and freedom. Today he would certainly remind our community to embrace nonviolence. He would be concerned about the poor getting poorer. He would actively campaign for educational opportunities for all. He would be concerned about the immigrant community and their well-being. He would be concerned about the church's role in the community. He would still be working tirelessly to address economic hardships and ensure jobs for everyone. He would be addressing world conflict. Obviously, his work would not have been done, but he would still be embracing all God's children to fulfill the dream. As our city commemorates our 27th annual, we also join the State Commission celebrating their 28th annual. As we celebrate, let it not be a dream deferred, but a dream we personally live daily. We can make it happen. It's up to each one of us. So too, you, the residents of Aurora, the Community Relations Division pledges our commitment to fostering and supporting our community, embracing nonviolence.
Hello, I'm Councilmember Renee Peterson, and I'd like to talk about Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King had a dream that was inspired by the Creator, a vision for the future and what the future should be. What better place should the civil rights begin than in our free nation, where people of all colors and creed shed their blood for our freedom. The 1960s was an exciting time. Here on our state capitol steps, there were a gathering of people of all colors. Martin Luther King and his followers, the Black Panthers, the Gray Panthers, Corky Gonzalez, they all came out to sing the song of hope. The song of hope, hope for equality for all people. Today, we still strive to reach that hope for equality for people. Let us never forget that in the Creator's eyes, we are all the same and equal. Let us keep striving to meet the challenge for that hope, for that dream, and let us never forget.
You're watching Aurora 8, proud to be serving the All-America city of Aurora, Colorado.
Greetings and welcome to the 2013 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Colorado holidays here in Colorado. This year will mark the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, as well as the 50th anniversaries of the March on DC, as well as the letter from the Birmingham jail. My name is Vern L. Howard, and I am the chairman of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Colorado Holiday Commission. Dr. King spoke about how darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that. How hate can't drive out hate, only love can do that. Dr. King had spoke and written over 2 million words. In those 2 million words, we have found the causes for so many different things. Here today, in 2013, we look at some of those things that exist not only when Dr. King first started marching, but they exist today. Today I am joined with a wonderful panel, a group of professionals, and we will be discussing different issues that affect us today. To my far right, I have Commissioner Robert Joseph. I have President Felicia Gilbert of the, I'm sorry, forgive me. And to my right, I have Vanette Stewart of the USDA. Mm-hmm. And to my left, I have Dr. Eric Nelson, the Vice President of the Aurora branch of the NAACP. Today we're going to be talking about such issues as assimilation. We'll be talking about issues such as discrimination and social justice, social equality, and things of that nature. So let's get started. Dr. Nelson, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, again, I'm Eric Nelson, and I'm a professor at Colorado State University. I'm also the vice president with the Aurora NAACP branch and also the state conference. And I'm very welcome and glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. And Vanette, tell us about yourself.
Vanette Stewart. I'm with the USDA Packers and Stockyards program. Formerly served as the special emphasis program for the African American program, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Felicia.
I am very happy to be here. I'm Felicia Griffin. I'm the chair of the Aurora Human Relations Commission. I also work for the Colorado Center on Law and Policy and have dedicated my life to working on issues of injustice for marginalized communities. And this is a really great celebration for me. I went to high school just a few miles up the road at Gateway High School. And back in the 90s, I instituted the very first full school Martin Luther King Day celebration. And so I'm honored to be a part of the city of Aurora, who's having a week-long celebration, and I'm honored to be a part of this discussion today.
Super. Commissioner Joseph, talk to us.
Yes, I'm Robert Joseph. I'm a commissioner with the Human Relations Commission. I'm also a city employee. I'm an animal care officer for the city of Aurora, and I'm happy to be here today on this panel.
Okay, so let's ask a general question. Should it be legal for an employer to dictate how an employee can wear their hair, like braids or bald or long or straight? Or how about this? Women can or cannot wear makeup, or even perhaps a dress code. Now, Commissioner Joseph, you said you work for the city of Aurora. Do you wear a uniform?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Should it be lawful for them to tell you how you can wear your hair or to wear that uniform, or what's your thoughts?
Well, there is a dress code, and so I have to abide by that code. The dress code doesn't really include the way I wear my hair, as long as it's neat and professional looking. So that's what I go by. Whether it's wrong or right, I really don't have an opinion along that line, but I adhere to the rules, which is that I keep a professional appearance at all times.
Okay. Now, question, as long as it's neat, you said. Now, who's to dictate if it's neat or not?
That's a good question. I guess my supervisors would probably have a say-so in that, but I guess it starts with me at home. When I get ready to, leave for work, I have to make sure that my appearance is intact and not, not anything that's gonna bring any kind of negative effects upon the city.
Okay. Felicia, same question.
So I would say that it shouldn't matter what your hair looks like if it does not interfere with the safety of the job or interfere with, if you're in manufacturing, having your hair up and out of the way of machinery is probably important. But as long as it doesn't impact your job at all, I would say that that doesn't matter if you conduct your business and do your job effectively.
So you subscribe to the Apple way of doing things then?
Yes. And I think what happens when we really try to fit people into small of a box is we lose the individuality that individuals can bring to a team. We lose learning about cultural differences. We lose opportunities to really get to know people on a deeper level. So the more we ask them to assimilate or conform, the more I think an employer is going to lose in the end.
Okay. Renette?
I'm kind of with the commissioner down here. I believe that if it's professional and presentable, it shouldn't be a problem, because if you have a style or you're wearing something that could be distracting, you may not be as effective in your job. So I would say that, yeah, you need to make sure that it is presentable, but I don't think that it should be limited, or people should be enclosed to how they wear their hair. I mean, more educating the workplace about diversity would be, to me, the first step in really understanding that everyone is different.
Okay. Dr. Nielsen, you're an educator, so you probably in your classrooms see a little bit of everything. Same question, and add how it may or may not affect the class and their ability to learn and perform.
I would tend to agree with the rest of the panel in regards to that, due to the simple fact that based upon how one wears their hair represents their cultural background. And when you look at a classroom and you see the diversity amongst the classroom, it really says a lot to the environment or what have you. The environment is not contingent upon one race, shall I say. There's a diversity and a whole to it. So that's why I tend to agree with the rest of the panel.
Okay. Felicia, you had mentioned assimilation in your comments. Tell me, what does assimilation mean to you?
For those Trekkies out there, I go right back to the Borg. The Borg's intent was to assimilate everyone to be the same. And so I really feel like one of the benefits of living in America is that we are truly a melting pot, and we all bring different things, whether it's cultural, whether it's the way that we wear our hair. I really feel that we wouldn't be America if we were all assimilated. Even though I believe many employers or many groups of people do try. I mean, I think there is an American assimilation. Immigrants that come over, you assimilate into our culture, and if you don't, then you stand outside the fringes of our culture. And so I would say I am not necessarily in agreement with assimilation, although I think it is alive and well in our companies and our organizations and in the employment realm.
Okay, Dr. Nielsen?
I would say what it means to me is how one would pretty much adjust or fit in to a particular environment. More importantly, looking at the statistics on a black male or woman. when they come into certain workplace environments with trying to fit in.
Okay.
I think is unfair, and I think is not needed with the way this world has evolved.
Okay. Vanette?
I too believe that that you're fitting in, you're adjusting. I don't necessarily believe that you have to change who you are, but you have to understand maybe what the rules are or what the expectations are, and maybe adjust to them, but that's not changing who you are as a person.
Okay. So when we take a look at a simulation, then basically what I'm hearing is that we're basically working to fit in without jeopardizing our core values or who we are,
Exactly.
or where we come from. So let's speak about that for a moment. Vanette, where are you from originally?
Colorado.
Okay. Dr. Nelson?
Albany, Georgia.
Okay. Commissioner Joseph?
The Caribbean, Antigua.
Okay. Alrighty. I bet you're loving the weather here, huh?
I'm assimilated.
right.
Okay. Felicia?
Kansas City.
Missouri or
Right on the Kansas line, but I claim Missouri as well.
Okay. So when we stop and think about assimilation, is it important to assimilate when you're working for a employer and in the way they want things done, Dr. Nelson?
I would tend to agree, based on the needs of the business.
Based on the needs of the business. I'm going to stop you on that point real quick and ask Commissioner Joseph the same question.
I would agree as well.
You would? Okay.
Yes, I remember earlier that we had made a statement about when in Rome.
Yes.
So, to me, you have to follow the laws of Rome.
Follow the laws of Rome. Okay.
You're assimilating.
All right, Felicia?
Can you restate the question?
Sounds like a lawyer. Do you believe that when you're working with an employer that you need to assimilate to their way of doing things?
So for me, as long as the assimilation did not infringe on my moral values and was not an attack on my character or my culture or my religious beliefs, it didn't it didn't hamper those, or then following the rules of the business, I would say yes.
Okay, Vanette?
I don't know if it's so much assimilating as it is being accommodating.
Okay.
Accommodating is what I would say, because you may not totally agree, but you accommodate. You do what when in Rome, do what you do as the Romans do. But I mean, that may not be totally what you are embracing, but you're accommodating that request or that guideline.
Okay. Felicia, you had mentioned that as long as it didn't infringe upon your moral values, your character, so forth, so on. And Dr. King talked about content of character. So let's move on to another subject real quick, and we're going to start with Commissioner Joseph again. Social equality. What does that look like to you?
Social equality. I'm from a British background, and British has social differences whereby you're either in the social upscale or you're in the social low scale, I would guess. So when you mention social equality to me, then it's kind of perplexing, because we can't all be on the social plane where we're at the same level.
Okay.
So it's a little hard for me to put my finger on what I would consider social equality to be as far as on a social level.
Okay.
So I defer to another panel member, I guess.
All right. Well, Felicia, since he passed the baton.
So the word that I would use for that is social justice. And I agree with what the commissioner just said. We are not all on an even playing field, and there are disparities and inequalities all around, and many for people of color in this country. And so I would say it's social justice because we are still working and each day to break down barriers for people to have opportunities, even break down barriers for people to have a human need such as health care. And so, you know, I think what we're looking for there is we're reaching for equality. That's what we're reaching for. And for me, you know, once we get there, you know, then we have justice. Then it's fair. So,
Vanette?
I would agree with Felicia and the commissioner in that we don't have a level playing field, but I think the goal is to strive towards providing that level playing field for everyone. So that should be the goal in the workplace, you know, diversity and really providing the same opportunities for everyone across the board, whether it's moving upwards or whatever it is. It should that should be there, not based on necessarily. Say for instance, you have someone coming in at entry level, you still want to push them up. They may already have, you know, someone already at the top, but provide those same opportunities that help get that person to the top for that person that's just coming in the door.
Okay.
I would tend to agree with the rest of the panel as well, but at the same fact, I go back to say, you know, have we really attained that equality? You know, when we look at the social trend of things in workplace, it's just sad. You know, when you look at it, with how others are held down because of another person or because of another race or because of another particular group. You know, you find yourself in that good old boy network, or what have you, and when it comes to social equality, regardless of your education, regardless of your background, regardless of your experience, it all boils down to it is what it is. Unless you're in that network, you know, you're not going to advance.
Okay. So, yes, ma'am.
Can I just respond to that? And something that I recently read in data is, I mean, if you look at African Americans in Fortune 500 companies, there's only one African American running a Fortune 500 company. And so, I mean, the data speaks for itself. There are definitely barriers to moving up in companies for people of color.
So, in the 50s and the 60s, as Dr. King was marching, their battle hymn was "We Shall Overcome." Have we overcame?
God, no.
Have we overcame?
We have a long ways to go.
Felicia?
No, sir, but I would just add that I'm pretty excited that I can tell my children that they have a possibility to be the President of the United States.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Joseph, have we overcame?
I guess I would have to agree with the rest of the panel to say that we haven't, but we have made strides whereby we can now aspire to become the president or, you know, anything that we really want to. But speaking of society, we're still, it seems as if we're still being held down. And for me personally and other blacks, I'm quite sure that they can testify to that feeling and that experience.
Okay. So when we think back 50 years and Dr. King spoke of the Declaration of Independence, and we think about how he had mentioned that that document talked about the ineligible rights that we each have, our human rights, basically. do you believe that the United States of America has lived up to the true meaning of that creed?
I tend to disagree.
Okay.
As my mom would say, we have a ways to go.
All righty. Vanette?
Striving.
Striving.
My mom would say the same thing. We have a ways to go.
Okay. Now, each of you serve on a commission or in a position that you can exact some form of change. Briefly, and maybe in just a short sentence, what are you doing to make that change, to make America that place where we want to live, Felicia?
Right now, I'm doing this show for a city that I love, and I'm not with my children. So there's some sacrifice that I'm making to do this work, and not with my husband. So there's sacrificing of time and effort because it improves the future for my children. So it's a double-edged sword.
Commissioner Joseph.
Well, I'm volunteering. I'm a volunteer for the Human Relations Commission. I've also volunteered for several other organizations throughout the city. I'm a city employee. I've gone to school. I have attained my master's degree. So I've tried to educate myself, and I've tried to serve my community, and I try to be the best of whatever I can be, whatever I'm doing. So like Martin Luther King had said, if you're a trash collector, be the best trash collector that you can be. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I try to do as far as putting my best foot forward with whatever it is that I do.
Okay. So each of us are working toward making not only Aurora, but America better. We're trying to educate our children. We're trying to do that. We want to follow the example of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had spoke and written over 2 million words. Once again, in those 2 million words, we can each find the place where we need to be. In the letter from the Birmingham jail, Dr. King talked about injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Hence, this year, our theme is injustice is still a threat. So as we sit here tonight at this Martin Luther King Forum, this panelists have actually came up with the answer to the question. Injustice is still a threat, and it's alive and well. Whether it's in the workplace, whether it's racial equality, social equality, sexual equality, healthcare equality, it doesn't matter. We are still dealing with the same issues that Dr. King and them dealt with. We hear about the voter oppression that's taken place, places that are trying to kill the black vote, places that are not allowing people to vote, trying to control everything they possibly can to get whatever candidate they choose to have elected. With that said, we all need to remember injustice is still a threat, and each of us can play a role in making the society just. Thank you, and have a good night.
I'm Morgan Carroll, State Senator for Aurora Senate District 29, half of Aurora, Eastern Arapahoe County, and our current Senate Majority Leader for the Colorado State Senate. And I'm excited that Aurora is celebrating the memory and the tradition and the vision of Martin Luther King. For me, everything we do every day at the Capitol and in our community reminds us that there are other opportunities to not only celebrate the historic gains we've made, but I think it's important for us to pay attention to the current needs of people to have full equality in Colorado. Right now in our Colorado State Legislature, we will be dealing with a variety of issues in a very contemporary setting on basic civil rights for people. A lot of folks may not know that the original Civil Rights Act of 1964 federally that Martin Luther King marched about only gave civil rights protections for people in employers that were 15 or more people. So those very same civil rights protections on non-discrimination in the workplace under 15 have to be closed as a loophole with the state. So this year, for example, one of the ways I feel we can honor the vision of Martin Luther King is to join the other 45 states that have finally closed the loophole to make sure that you have the same civil rights against being discriminated at work, whether you work for an employer that has 20 people or work for an employer that has 10. We will also be taking up the issue of civil unions this year in the legislature, and we think that there's strong bipartisan support for the passage of that this year. We will be looking at a whole host of issues that on a day-to-day level affect the very, what is our current challenges as far as making sure that we continue to respect all people and give all people equal rights in Colorado. So I think the best way for me that I can honor the memory and the vision of Martin Luther King is to ask myself, who among us right now isn't enjoying full equal rights? And when you're in a position to try and deliver equality for all people, I think that's the best way we can celebrate his legacy and the best way we can celebrate his memory.
I'm Chief Dan Oates with the Aurora Police Department. And Martin Luther King is certainly the greatest human rights, civil rights leader of my lifetime. And I think in American history, he ranks right up there with Abraham Lincoln, our greatest president, as a figure that represents American democracy and the spirit of acceptance of everyone for who they are. And I think it's so important that Aurora, this culturally rich and diverse city of 330,000 people, honors Martin Luther King the way we do every year. I don't know of another city that invests the energy that we do in a week-long memorial. So I'm very pleased to be able to speak about Martin Luther King and to be part of the celebration. I just think it's wonderful for this city.
You're watching Aurora 8, proud to be serving Aurora, Colorado, an all-America city.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Shannon Bannister, Chief of the Community Relations Division for the City of Aurora. Welcome to our discussion of contemporary issues on Channel 8. To my far left is
Steve Hogan, Mayor of the City of Aurora. Pleasure to be here.
You want to tell us a little bit more about you, Steve, please?
Well, I'm a more than 40-year resident of the city. Have been involved in the community virtually all that time. Mayor, former city council member, former state representative, got E470 built, number of things involved in the community for a long time.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. William Stewart, Deputy Superintendent of Aurora Public Schools. A longtime resident of Aurora and my entire career with Aurora Public Schools. Proud graduate of Gateway High School and 27 years serving with APS as a classroom teacher, building administrator, district administrator, and currently Deputy Superintendent.
Congratulations for all of that.
Thank you for having me.
And to my far right?
Barbara, good evening. Dan Oates, Chief of Police here in Aurora, and I have the privilege of leading close to 800 wonderful men and women providing services to our 335,000 residents. So it's a privilege to be here tonight.
Thank you for being here.
Debbie Hunter-Holen, City Council at Large, and I also work for Aurora Public Schools. And I am just really thankful for you asking me to be here, and I am looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Sir?
Alton Scales, President of the Community College of Aurora. I'm in my 30th year in higher education, and my first day on the job was July the 20th.
So this is really significant that we should have this discussion tonight.
Most apropos.
Absolutely. I'd like to read a statement, and then I'm going to ask you to respond. Many of us understand the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution that protects the right of people to keep and bear arms, adopted into law in December 1791. However, in 2008 and 2010, the Supreme Court issued two landmark decisions officially establishing this interpretation. The court ruled that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess a firearm unconnected to service in the militia, to use that arm for traditionally lawful purposes such as self-defense within the home. None of the senseless violence we've seen in the past 12 months is connected to self-defense in the home. With that in mind, I'm going to ask you about gun safety. This is not about gun control, but gun safety. I want to know what you're doing as major employers in our city, what you're doing to keep your employees safe, and what you're doing to keep your clients and your students safe in your environment. Anybody want to start it, or shall I call you out? Mayor.
Well, certainly the city is a major employer. We have more than 2,000 full-time employees, a number of seasonal employees and others. And I've got to say before I begin that the city of Aurora is a safe city. Even with the terrible tragedy on July 20th, we're a safe city, and I know the chief can speak more to that when the time comes. But in Colorado, most of the gun laws are established by the legislature. We end up enforcing them. There are certain things we can do. For example, we have some leeway in concealed carry area. We have some leeway in identifying gun-free zones. We don't allow rifles to be in the back window of pickup trucks anymore. So there are things that we can do and things that we have done. That doesn't mean that we've done enough. I know that there will be continuing discussion about what we need to do. But I think we also cannot lose sight of the fact that a safe city just doesn't involve gun control. It involves mental health services. It involves community programs. It involves cooperation with the educational system. It involves a whole host of activities that I hope will be the source of some discussion while we go through these next weeks down in the legislature.
Anyone else want to join? Go ahead.
If I could, Barbara.
Sure.
You know, Martin Luther King's great legacy is perhaps our greatest civil rights leader, but he's also known, of course, for his vehicle for success, which was nonviolent advocacy. And when we talk about guns, when we talk about gun control, when we talk about crime, we're talking about violence. And of course, Dr. King's legacy is that he repudiated violence in all forms. And I think that's a philosophy and a belief and a direction that all of us should follow. Our role in the police department, of course, is to keep the city as safe as we can. As the mayor said, we are consistently rated among cities our size as one of the safest cities in the nation. And one of the things we try to do as a department is participate in every dialogue, every effort, in the community around violence and messages of anti-violence. We work very, very closely with Aurora Public Schools on security projects, and I'm sure William can talk to some of the efforts to keep the schools safe. But you know, our commitment is complete to the entire city, and our officers are always available in any setting to talk about issues of crime prevention, gun safety, and those kinds of things. And we make every contribution we can. But you know, I echo the mayor's sentiments that even though we had this truly horrific event 6 months ago, and I know that Aurora, we're going through a period of resilience here with the theater about to open at the 6-month mark of that event. This is fundamentally a very safe city, and it's a great city to live and work in.
And you mentioned Mr. Stewart, so I'll ask you to comment, please.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, from our school board, our Superintendent Barry, the leadership team, every employee in the Aurora Public Schools, of which there are approximately 5,000, our commitment is around safety, and as mentioned by the mayor, it's broader than just gun safety. We are concerned with the day-to-day safety of every student, 40,000 students approximately now in Aurora Public Schools, every single day. And it's embedded in our strategic plan, a major goal to provide safe and healthy learning and teaching environments for all of our students and all of our employees. And it's something we take very seriously. We dedicate a tremendous amount of resources to it. And really, there's kind of a three-pronged approach to school safety that we employ. One is around training. We do a tremendous amount of training for all of our security personnel. We have about 15 district security personnel. They work closely with the Aurora Police Department with another 15 school resource officers who work in our buildings. Tremendous collaboration in that regard. But the training is critical, that all of our employees know the safety protocols, and we go over those regularly. We engage in quarterly incident response team trainings where we bring together all of the security folks and work with the Aurora Police Department and Aurora Fire Department to make sure that our communication channels are clear, and that in the event that there is any kind of emergency, that we're practiced and we're ready to go. So training is a very important part. From a facility standpoint, we know it's critical that we keep state-of-the-art security measures in place at our buildings, and we're constantly updating those. Everything from all of our exterior doors being locked and students having to show IDs to get into buildings, we have over 1,200 video cameras in our school district. 1,200 video cameras watching all of the doors and all of the facilities. We have 52 schools and 13 support sites. So it's a tremendous effort, but we're committed to dedicating the resources to keep students and staff safe. And the last prong, as I mentioned, is really the collaborative nature. We know that we cannot do this alone. The Aurora Public Schools can't do it alone. The Aurora Police Department can't do it alone in terms of keeping our students safe. And so we do. At every possible opportunity, we collaborate with our partners in the city, across the city, and again, engage in exercises that allow us to test our systems and make sure that on a very regular basis we're making sure that everything is in the best shape and that people are well trained.
Well, you mentioned a lot of things about cameras and training. Trainings, I think our community is really interested in. You've given us a really snapshot of what happened.
And speaking of the community, thank you. I will put out a pitch that we are very interested in hearing from our community and getting feedback from them around their views on safety and the schools and what we can be doing better. And in February, at a yet-to-be-determined date, we will be having a town hall meeting where we'll be inviting all of the community to come together and share with us their ideas about school safety so that we can get the pulse of the community around that issue.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me toss it back to our council member at large, Ms. Debbie Holen Hunter. Hunter Holen, excuse me.
Excuse me. I would like to share that because I work for the school district and the city of Aurora, I'm privy to a lot of things that happen.
Inside information.
Inside information. But I do want to share that we are in a collaborative effort. We're putting together a season of nonviolence. So we're working with the city of Aurora, the police department, and also the school district, and bringing in a speaker to talk to our students about the benefits of nonviolence. And our speaker is actually a person who has, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, his name is Azim Kamisa,
Thank
and he has a very compelling story about how his son was murdered in California while delivering pizza, and it's a story. It's a wonderful story of redemption that he talks about, and a wonderful message for young people about choosing nonviolent options to conflict.
Yeah,
That's
so
really
we're
neat.
really excited about that.
How
effort.
wonderful. Yeah, we mentioned about nonviolence, and I lived in Wyoming for a lot of years, and I participated in one march, and that was when the Unitarian minister was killed down in Selma, and his parents lived across the street from me. And so when they were telling us about marching, you can't retaliate, you take it, et cetera, and I thought, how difficult is this for me to do this? And I remember Roy Wilkins, who was the head of the NAACP, got off the plane and led that march. And I was able to do it one time, but I don't know that I could have ever done it time and time again. I think it takes a lot of training, a lot of control, a lot of love to be cajoled by others on the sideline and you ignore them and just know that you have a prize, your eye is on the prize, and what your attitude needs to be. So with that, you started work here right after it all happened. So tell us a little bit about, not a little bit, plenty about what you're doing on the college level to keep your staff secure and the students who love being at CCA. You're a jewel in our crown here.
Well, thank you for that. As the mayor mentioned, much of the way we respond to it is pretty much dictated to us by the state Supreme Court. So we allow firearms on campus. One of the things that we ask is that you share with us that you have a valid permit, and we keep that information just for our personal database, not to be shared with anyone, so that we just have an idea as to what the dynamics are on our campus. One of the things that we look at is safety in general. And so we look at safety from a sanitation perspective, a clean environment. We have protocols where now new employees have to go through particular pieces of their orientation around our safety protocols so that we can certify that it did happen. Over the next 3 weeks, we'll have 9 training sessions around safety and security. So on the cuff of it, we try to incorporate it into our culture. That it really doesn't matter what type of physical or technological pieces we have in place if the people fail to do their role in it all. So we look at creating a culture around it.
I see. A culture. Is that what Aurora wants to have, a culture around it? How would you speak to that?
I would add one thing very important that Alton mentions is the culture of our community and the school community specifically. We know that safety is going to be enhanced most effectively to the extent that we have a culture where our students and our staff feel comfortable sharing their ideas, sharing their concerns, sharing rumors that they might hear that are related to safety. And so we, in addition to all the technical things that I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're always working very hard at doing is cultivating that culture where we encourage our students and our staff to share with adults in buildings or with leadership concerns they have about their own safety or things that they hear about safety in the community, so that we can respond and we can communicate with the authorities. But it's that kind of culture that is really going to keep Aurora safe in general, is one where our citizens and our students feel safe to communicate.
Okay, I know we have a police culture, we have a bureaucratic culture, and a school culture. So we want to cultivate a community culture where the community feels.
That's absolutely right, Barbara. What keeps this community safe, and again, it is a safe community, is the fact that we are a community. That the major institutions, the leaders in this town, work so closely together, share information readily, and impart to all their constituents what's necessary. One of the reasons the 720 tragedy was so powerful was because we all feel safe in this community and everyone was affected by it. And that was one act of, well, I probably shouldn't characterize it because it's still a criminal case, but it was the act of one person the extraordinarily evil act of one person. But as a community, we were powerfully affected because even though this is a large city, it's a very tight community. And the kinds of things that William mentioned that are going on in the school, or Elton mentioned is going on at the campus, that kind of cohesiveness among all of our institutions is what keeps us safe. It's not how many guns there are in our community. It's just not. It's the fact that we are a community and we protect each other and we're watching out for each other.
Absolutely. And I know we have a special relationship with the police department, with KCRT, in terms of keeping the police, making sure that they are transparent in what is happening with, and sharing it with a kaleidoscope of people from different backgrounds, et cetera, the information that in regard to things that happen in the community, both good and bad.
Right, and it's that kind of transparency that creates the goodwill, that creates the trust, so that we come to each other, no matter what institution is represented here or represented in the city, we come to each other readily when there is a problem, or there's indications of a problem.
Absolutely. Would you like to quote, well, did I hear someone
Well, I was
get
just
it?
going to say,
And
and that expands to a number of other places
ahead.
in the community. There was a luncheon today where the commander of Buckley Air Force Base gave essentially a state of the base address. And fully 1/3 of what he talked about was the interaction between the base and the city, the community, and how important that is for them as well as for the community, because you know, they have folks who live off base. They have people whose wives and husbands work in our city, and there's got to be a real sharing of information and opportunities, so that we can react when we need to react, so that we can prevent where we can prevent, and so that we can make this the comfortable place, continue to make it the comfortable place to live that it is. You know, we have had a great reputation, a well-deserved reputation, and I know that the leaders in this community are ready to make sure that that reputation doesn't go sideways. We're going to do what it takes, and it will involve everyone.
Yes, and we are a great city, and of course, our Buckley Air Force Base is a great part of our community. I know my Veterans Affairs Commission tells me that all the time, how many veterans live here and work here, and Barbara, you just don't know. And so they remind me of that on a monthly basis, if not other times too. So I know how important they are. Let's talk a little bit about what other kinds of things, are there other things that you'd like to mention that you're doing at your establishment as one of the major employers?
Yes, we have a critical incident team.
All right.
That operates under our emergency operation plan. We look at potential threats as it relates to our tabletop exercises.
All right.
We have the ability to remotely lock down all of our doors in every building.
Wow.
And that prevents the migration of an individual from going from one building to the other. We train individuals.
Impressive.
Yes, we train individuals in how to respond in the event of an active shooter. We have cameras that capture you from the time you step out of your car, through the buildings, all the hallways. We can communicate via the telephone system that will broadcast in the hallways and in every classroom. So this is one of the things that the Community College of Aurora not only works on a regular basis, but we train others to respond to. So we take it serious, and we understand the importance of readiness.
Boy, I'm amazed. I guess just as an individual, you see a lot of stuff on TV, and you know that's not real. But here you're talking about stuff that I've seen on TV that's real.
Yes.
And that's quite impressive. That's impressive. And that?
Well, that's part of this city of Aurora.
Yes.
And the important word is city. We're not a small town.
That's right.
We're not a medium-sized suburb. We're city. We're a city in our own right. And we have a lot of skill here. We have great leaders. We have what it takes to become even better. And the kinds of things that are described, the other kinds of things that nobody wants to talk about, they're here. They're here. There's no doubt about it. And that's part of why, as the chief indicated, despite all that, we're a very close-knit community, and when something hits somebody, it hits everybody.
That's right.
And so what we have to have and make sure we continue is everybody responding.
That is amazing. Just amazing. Well, I want each of you to think of one parting sentence you'd like to leave with the community as we get ready to close down our segment here. Let's start with, can I start with council member?
Sure.
What would you like to, that's this community, leave a sentence for them, please.
It has been said by everyone here, but we are a safe community. We are a safe city. We care about our citizens. We care about collaboration, and we do what we need to do to make things happen, make things better for everyone. I'm really happy that I live in Aurora.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Scales.
The Community College of Aurora does not operate in a silo. We work in full partnership with our police department, the city, the fire department, the school districts. And we recognize that, you know, this is what we have to do as a community. Additionally, we also do preventive things by creating a just society, which is part of it. And we do mental health checks so that when a behavior changes, we try to have interventions where appropriate.
All right. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. I do believe that the theme of community and collaboration is what is most important and what I would like the viewers to recognize most. All of the leaders here in this panel and across the city, the school district, the community college, we recognize that safety in general, in every home, on every street, every building, office, every school certainly, is going to be assured to the extent that we don't become complacent about it. And we keep our conversations going, we keep our trainings going. It's not something that we pull out a notebook once a year and go through our guidelines and regulations and then put it back on the shelf. This is something that is part of our daily practice, our daily conversations, because we care so much about the city of Aurora and all of the residents and children.
Thank you. Chief.
We're coming up on the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. This is one of the safest, most diverse, and most successful cities in the country, and it's just an honor to be part of this city.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor.
The only thing I would add is, despite all the glowing things that we've all said, there's always more we can do.
Yep.
And we have a responsibility to ourselves and to our citizens and to this state to do what we can do, and I think we're all committed to do that, to make the city of Aurora the great place to live, work, play that we all want it to be.
All right, well, I want to thank each and every one of you. It's been an absolute pleasure to just hear about all the innovative and creative and wonderful things that we're doing in the third largest city in Colorado. Aurora, we're number one. Thank you so very much. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Mayor Steve Hogan, City of Aurora. It's a pleasure to talk to you about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm happy that the city of Aurora has seen fit for the past quarter century to be actively involved in commemorating and celebrating the legacy of this man. I have no doubt that he will be remembered as one of the great historical figures of the late 20th century in the United States and perhaps in the world. A true hero to our country. Somebody who talked about solving problems and doing things in a nonviolent nature. Certainly, with what we've gone through this past year here in Aurora, a nonviolent cooperative message is a welcome relief. But again, this man did things that others can only imagine. He did them with grace, he did them with style, he did them with force, he did them with personality. And he sent that message to the whole country, and the whole country listened. Many people forget that it was almost 100 years between the end of the Civil War and the beginning of his message. And that's a long time for any segment of society to wait to be recognized and to actually be treated equally as they should have been from the late 1860s. So again, I'm happy to say good words to the community on the celebration of this great man's birthday, and hope that everyone in Aurora will participate in remembering what Dr. King did and what he meant to all of us.
Hi, I'm Nanette Locke, a 12-year resident of the best city in the state of Colorado, the All-America city, Aurora. I have spent 31.5 years in the civil rights field. I had the honor and the privilege of working for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development 31.5 years in 4 regions and in headquarters enforcing the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act was passed 2 days after Dr. King's untimely death. So the injustice of people looking for housing, trying to buy housing, has certainly been assisted with the Fair Housing Act. Those that feel that they have been discriminated against based on their race or color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, disability, or handicap now have justice. Thank you so much, Dr. King. We will always love you.
Hello, and welcome to the City of Aurora's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s commemoration. My name is Veronica White. I am the immediate past president of the Human Relations Commission and the current first vice chair. This evening we are talking about Human Relations Commission. We're going to talk about the history of the Human Relations Commission, where it is today, and looking into the future. But first, I want to introduce the panelists. On my far left is Commissioner Robert Joseph. Second Vice Chair Deborah Campbell. To my immediate far right is Secretary and Commissioner Mary Van Dunk. We have the Chair of the Human Relations Commission, Felicia Griffin, and our fantastic staff, Dr. Barbara Shannon Bannister. Welcome, welcome panelists.
Thank you.
Our theme is injustice is still a threat. And so with that in mind, let's talk about the history of the Human Relations Commission, and I would like for Dr. Barbara Shannon Bannister to talk a little bit about that, but keeping that in mind, and then we're talking about where we are today and in the future. But understanding that injustice is still a threat, is the Human Relations Commission still viable?
Absolutely, because it ain't over yet.
Okay.
And we are not. I would say, just as we legislated that you would not discriminate, legislation is just the first part. It has to be in the hearts and minds of the people that you deal with. And so that's happened over time. It just didn't, the legislature didn't just say this is going to be and everybody complied. No, they did not. But let me get back to the Human Relations Commission was established in 1968. And that was the time when our country recognized that there needed to be an office or an organization that would address discrimination complaints. Our charter says we are empowered to investigate alleged discrimination complaints in the area of housing, public accommodation, and employment. Mm-hmm. And that is still valid. Those things are still going on. Mm-hmm. People are still being discriminated in employment. People are still being denied housing. And in public accommodations, you know, you've seen on television, we don't serve these people. So, and that's still happening in the 21st century. So yes, it is still viable, and I'm happy to say our mayor and our council are very, very supportive of the work that the Human Relations Commission is about doing.
I have to give our mayor and council kudos as well, because I've been on the Human Relations Commission for probably
you don't want to say how long, do you?
A long time. I've been on a long time. The years don't matter because I believe in what the mission is. We have a council and a a mayor who really do support what we're doing, and that is huge, because if we look at the history of civil and human rights, there are many, many people who have the hearts to want to make that change, but as you talked about legislation, you had to have the individuals who had the heart as well, who are able to make that legislation for it to happen, because those people who are in the field, they had the heart, but they had to encompass a whole group of villagers who had power in legislation, who had power to make those things move. And that's where I believe HRC is really now able to do, because we have those individuals who have that piece of power to help us move what our policy, our goals are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can tell you this mayor has been here from the beginning when I started back in many years ago. Of course, you know, this is our 27th annual, and I was just a mere child when we started. But he has been, when he was a council member at that time, he was here for our first one, our first Martin Luther King commemoration. And from that first time, you know, he was very supportive of the goals and objectives of the Human Relations Commission. And over time, he has not changed.
True. I want to ask any of the other panelists, jump in at any time, please. Why did you join the HRC?
I'd be happy to answer that question. This work has been in my heart since I was a child. I grew up right here in the city of Aurora. I left for about 8 years, and my husband and I decided that there's no place better to bring our kids back and raise our kids. And so, first of all, I want to contribute to my community. Second of all, as Dr. Bannister said, there are still issues today that we have to deal with, and injustice is still a threat. And so I believe that it's our job to get involved and make a difference and do something. And so that's why I joined. We've got some great work ahead of us, and we appreciate the leaders in this city, and we're looking for more community members to join us in this work.
Commissioner Campbell.
Well, I joined mainly because I had lived elsewhere, but I was aware of the community work that Aurora did, and it was really impressive. So when I moved to Aurora, I was very happy to have the opportunity to join the commission and to be able to help out in any way I can. And there is a lot of work to be done.
When we talk about work to be done, what are we talking about? What work is there that needs to be done?
Being involved in the community, because the community we need to mirror what the community feels, so that we are supposed to be that connection between the community and the city council. All of you are responsive directly to city council. You're appointed by city council. I work for the city manager because I'm an employee. You are volunteers. So, but you are that connection between the city council and the community. So therefore, you need to be able to get out in the community, find out what's happening in the community, be involved in the community, and report back to city council. Here is what's happening. Here's what we think we need to be doing. Can you support us in whatever. You are the mirror of the community for the city council.
Anybody can come to the commission?
Anybody can come to the commission.
Okay.
Anybody can apply, and we have a process that goes through the city clerk's office, and then we interview and we make recommendations to city council, but they are ultimately the people who appointed each one of you. Ours is an advisory position.
Okay. Ms. Barber, can you share with us what has HRC done? And then from that, commissioners, what do you see HRC doing in 2013?
We have investigated discrimination complaints. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Colorado Civil Rights Division. Because we have had diminished staff over the years, we've instituted that procedure so that if someone calls me with a discrimination complaint, which we can only investigate informally, we can't adjust any punitive damages or anything. We try to investigate it informally and try to resolve it by mediation, etc. So, but if something comes to me that I think is much, much bigger than I can handle, I can hand it to EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Colorado Civil Rights Division. They investigate it, get back to us and tell us what they think and give us probable cause or no probable cause. So that's another avenue for us to do the things we need to do. The Martin Luther King commemoration was started when I was chair of the commission. So for 27 years, it's been your baby. From the commission, you established KCRT. KCRT is one of your babies. Yes. Aurora Community Faith is one of your babies. Kaleidoscope is one of your babies. ICNA is one of your, well, let me tell you what they're all about. Human Relations Commission, HRC, ACOF, Aurora Community of Faith, KAC, Kaleidoscope, Celebrating Diversity, Celebrating All Cultures, ICNA, International Cross-Cultural Network of Aurora. All of those are things that came out of the vision of the Human Relations Commission. So don't ever forget that. You've done some big things. And these organizations are still very viable and active in the community.
With the history that we have, with it, HRC has a good legacy there, a very good legacy. You mentioned that currently you have a diminished staff. Does that diminished staff affect the work that, as staff, that you have to do for HRC?
Yes, it does, but I think that's going to get better almost immediately.
Okay.
So we'll be doing that. One of the other things I want to say was under the Human Relations Commission that we got the Martin Luther King Jr. Library. We're the only city in this state of Colorado that has a Martin Luther King Jr. library.
I was on the commission when we broke ground.
Isn't that a biggie?
Yes.
Isn't that a biggie? And we're going to get more.
That's right. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Chair, talk to us a little bit about, and the rest of the commissioners, where do you see HRC going, knowing a little bit about the history, having that information, knowing why you joined and where you want to see human and civil rights go? Where do you want to see this commission going, and what do you want to see do it?
Well, first I want to say I'm so excited because a wonderful foundation has been built by commissioners in the past, by leadership, and your leadership and Dr. Bannister's leadership. So we can do nothing but go forward and up. We've got lots of goals. One of the big goals for this year is to really reach out to the community and really see what they expect from us. We plan to do some community forums. We want to talk about what's going on in Aurora. We also don't want people to forget the great things that are happening in Aurora. And so you will hopefully see commissioners all over the city at events representing, be sure to reach out to commissioners that you see. We have brown name tags, and we're happy to listen and hear what you have to say. We will continue the great work of the MLK commemoration. We are in that week right now. If you haven't seen the schedule of activities, you have not missed out yet. There is so much to do and so much to celebrate. And this celebration is for everyone. Everyone. And I have to tell you, yes, I have to tell you that we have something to be proud of in Aurora. There are not many cities doing a week-long celebration of a national hero. Oh, sorry, there are not any other cities.
Right.
So I'm just really excited about the future. We've got some goals to really increase our communications to ensure that more people have access to the information that we have. Mary can probably talk about our open meetings each month.
Yes, we are going to be having open meetings, and we'd like to invite the public to come and attend. I see us reaching out to the community further and further out, touching the youth, touching the elderly, touching people in needs, and just bringing us all together as a whole community. I'm so proud of us.
What I see with all of you, and I hope the audience sees that, is that energy. There's so much energy that's up here. I can feel it, and that's the energy that's going to move this cause forward. I'm glad that we have a new chair that has fire, because it takes that fire to move that foundation forward. It takes the knowledge that Commissioner Campbell has, and Commissioner Joseph, and Commissioner Van Dunk. So I'm really happy to having taken one step back, but not further, and let this energy move forward. I'm very excited about this commission for 2013. Commissioner Joseph.
Well, I just wanted to mention the reason I decided to join the commission is because I enjoy living in Aurora. I'm a city employee as well, and I really enjoy the community. And so I wanted to serve this community and try to see what I can bring to the community to help and make our community better. And I would encourage anyone out there to think about what you can do to make the community a better place to live. And that's why I joined, and I'm proud and happy to be a part of the team and look forward to doing as much as I can for my community.
Here's a question for each of you, anybody. Is being involved in your community, being involved in the Human Relations Commission, is it a sacrifice?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. I'm not to say that everything we do, we have all the time in the world and resources to do it. But yes, sometimes we have to sacrifice and make choose priorities. Yes, and so sometimes I'm tired and I really don't want to do it sometimes. But I said, hey, you committed. You said you'd do it, so get out here and do it.
And you will do that.
And I will do that. And I will drag you with me. You know I will.
I do know. Is that sacrifice worth it?
Absolutely. Because I'm responsible for making where I live the best place I can be. And if I make it the best place for me, hopefully all of that spills over to the people I interact with, and it becomes that quality of life that you want to enjoy too.
Okay, all right.
Can I answer that as well?
Yes, sure.
I would really say that by volunteering for something like HRC or anything else that you're passionate about, it's critical for future generations. Our young people need to see us doing this good work. And as we do this good work, we pave the path for their future. And so I would say that, yes, it's a sacrifice. I didn't get to eat dinner at home tonight with my kiddos. But guess what? When they see Mom on TV, talking about how much she loves their community, then they will gain a love for this community. And so I would say that the sacrifice is definitely worth it. I agree with Dr. Bannister. And so, it is time for us to come together as a community. It's time for you to know your neighbors. It's time for you to know your city leaders. Let's not go into the house at night, close the door, and watch TV. Let's get involved and make the city the best it can be. So I challenge everyone.
Here's what, teach one, reach one?
Yes, for sure.
Commissioner Van Dunk.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to be out in the community and to offer support to those who can't physically do for things. We can represent a variety of people and programs and businesses just coming out ourselves and volunteering. My husband and I have raised our family here in Aurora. We've been out here for over 20 years, and just watching the growth of the city has been wonderful. We've done so many things in the community, and the leadership has gone to an Excel plateau. It's just wonderful to see the things that are going on in this community. And I feel really passionate about Aurora. I just love it. And I want to set an example for others that, you know, you can take a few nights of your life a couple times a month to do something for someone else. It has to be, you know, non-selfish.
Ms. Barbara mentioned the memorandums of agreement that HRC has, and what that brought to mind is HRC cannot work in a bubble. We have to continue to have those partnerships, whether it's the Office of Civil Rights, EEOC, whether it's our own city government. We have to have those partnerships, and those partnerships historically are the ones that actually made that legislation go through, had that president sign the Civil Rights Bill. It was those partnerships that did that, and we have to remember to make sure that we continue that, whether it's a community amongst ourselves. So other than the current partnerships that we have, are there any other partnerships out there that we're not looking at that we need to reach out to?
I think the faith-based community, because you know the leaders, the leaders of those faith-based churches, synagogues, mosques, etc., they have the captive audience. Once a week at least.
Through ACOF?
Through ACOF, or however we like to reach out, because we can get our message out to the faith-based community quite easily. Because as I said, they meet with their congregations or their gatherings at least once a week. And usually the people who are part of those faith-based communities are very, very respective of their leaders' suggestions of their getting involved. So they can be an extension of us and getting out to their neighborhood or to their block. We can organize something that gets the word out through them.
Okay.
That's one way.
That is
that's just one way.
And that's when you said that, though, that's a historical civil rights partnership.
That's right, absolutely.
That was
Dr. King was
exactly.
a minister,
that was the partnership that the civil rights had before.
That's right, absolutely.
Okay. Commissioner Campbell or Commissioner Joseph, comments? Other
I agree with
partnerships
everything
possibly?
that is being said here.
And where are we missing?
There's always room for improvement, and you know, this is a melting pot. So the more we can put in, the better it's going to be. And so I would encourage just any organizations, any sector of the community that feel as if they're not being represented to come on board, to get in touch with any one of us and let us know of your existence so that we can be inclusive and bring you on board.
And that's true, and Commissioner Van Dunk said something, but she didn't finish it, but we meet the first Wednesdays of every month, probably starting back up in March at 6 o'clock p.m. in the Aurora Room. And so our meetings are open to the public, and the public is welcome to come. We do have a time where Chair will allow for public to be invited to speak, and so we can hear what issues the community might have at that time. Is that correct?
One of the other partnerships we could, as I think about it, could be with the Chamber of Commerce. They reach out to all the businesses. We could have a business forum so that they would know their rights. We could talk about all kinds of things that businesses, small businesses especially, might want to know about. So that's another way for us to get involved with attending the meeting, and we are members of the Chamber by virtue of the city being a member of the Chamber. So we could attend meetings, etc., and reach out to our business community. And the Chamber of Commerce is a wonderful conduit, so we can get the message out.
It looks like 2013, we're going to be busy.
I tell you, we're going to be hopping.
We're going to be busy.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to be busy. So
Yes,
before we wrap up, I want to give everyone a last word. Ms. Barbara, I want you to be last.
Okay.
Okay. Starting with Commissioner Van Dunk. any comments about HRC community, why someone should join, why, you know, to wrap it up, why you're here?
I'm just here to support the community. It's a wonderful feeling to give. Give back to others, help people in need, and then to represent our city in a very positive way. And it's a wonderful commission here that we have, HRC, but I think the whole community of Aurora is just awesome.
Okay. Chair?
I guess my last words would be plain, it's just a challenge. We are celebrating MLK's legacy. He had a dream. I think most of us buy into that dream and need to do some work to make it a reality. And so I would just challenge everybody to get involved, whether it's HRC, get on Aurora City's website to find out how to apply to get involved, or there are probably hundreds of opportunities to volunteer to do something to make our city better. So get involved.
Commissioner Campbell?
Absolutely. There's plenty for everyone to do. Anybody just contact anyone and we'll tell you what you can do. We'll be happy to have you.
Commissioner Joseph?
I say empower your community. Get involved. Be a part of. Get in the game. Don't be a bystander and just watch and, you know, wait on somebody else to do it. You get involved. You do what you can and make our community a better place. It's already strong and powerful. We've seen that from 7/20, what happened on 7/20, and so, you know, let's get off the sideline and get involved.
Okay. And I would add, before I turn it over to Dr. Barbara, is I've always been an advocate since a child. That's the family I grew up in. And then as I moved to Aurora, Miss Barbara I met, and she is my mentor, and there's no way on this earth that I cannot be an advocate for civil rights or human rights. Having a child, having a grandchild, there is much work to be done. As you said, pave the way. I have a 2.5-year-old, have to pave that way. And so it's something that's in my blood. And so I love the work that I'm doing.
Well, we're not finished yet. We still have a little bit of discussion time. So I'm not going to take it over from you, but what other kinds of collaborative efforts could we make? We have a few more minutes.
So I think one thing that we know about the city is the diverse cultures.
Yes.
One of my children attends Prairie Middle School, and I believe the count of the number of cultures there is 60. And so bringing folks in from different cultures, finding opportunities to share and learn about other cultures, I think is something that that Barbara's office already does, but something that HRC can expand upon.
And that's funny you mentioned that, Chair, because my son went to Prairie, and yes, it was very diverse. My son's, you know, and having that understanding on what diversity means really was important to get to the administrators, because you can have a diverse cultural, you know, what is that, multi-generational, multicultural, what does that mean? If they didn't understand that, the kids weren't getting it. And so it was actually right around then when I really began to get involved in Aurora. I said, you know, I need to be that advocate for him because he's not being able to speak for himself. And actually, that's about the time I saw you on television. It was on Channel 8.
When her son was a kid.
You're
now married with a
right.
kid.
Right.
See how she tries to do
It's a compliment. So it was when you said reach out, that's teach one, reach one. That actually brought me into the city, seeing that. Okay, so you just took that all from me. Okay.
The other thing is that the mayor has initiated what we call the International Roundtable.
That's a huge piece.
So that's a huge piece, and so at least a member of the Human Relations Commission should be intricately involved in that, because that spreads us a little bit wider and more focused. So we should do that and be a part of that. So and I try to get information out to you. I'd probably send you too much stuff. But what is it? Too much TMI, too much information. So, but I try to send stuff to you so that you'll be aware of things and you can pick and choose. And I'll send the minutes and the council things and the planning commission and the public safety commission, all those things to you so that you can pick and choose and try to delegate commissioners to go to other things so that we can enhance our knowledge of our own city, because we don't know it all.
Right.
We don't know it all, but we can enhance our knowledge. Now, I do think our time is coming down a little bit, so I don't know how much time more we have, but well, go ahead and let me say a couple things from the proclamation. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had many beautiful words of wisdom and peace and dedicated his life to the dreams and rights and liberty for all people through a peaceful means. And today we remember his teachings of choosing to love more than hate, to seek justice rather than revenge, and to refrain from acts of violence to any person, group, or race. Remember, injustice is still a threat. Madam Chair?
It is, and there's work still to be done. So get involved.